Have you ever wondered what it would be like to wake up trapped in someone else's body, in someone else's life, in a world where your every breath depends on the whims of strangers? Tonight, we're diving into one of history's most hidden and dangerous worlds, where beauty was currency, addiction was survival, and freedom was just a distant dream. You open your eyes to the sound of distant music drifting through paper-thin walls. The air is thick with smoke that makes your lungs burn. And there's a sweet, cloying scent that seems to seep into everything around you. Your head feels heavy, your thoughts clouded. And as you try to sit up, silk fabric rustles against your skin. You're wearing clothes that aren't yours, in a room that isn't yours, living a life that isn't yours. Welcome to Shanghai, 1895. You are Mei Lin, a courtesan in one of the most notorious entertainment districts in the world, where opium flows like water and survival depends on your ability to navigate a maze of wealthy merchants, dangerous gangsters, and colonial officials who see you as nothing more than an exotic curiosity. The room you wake up in is small but elegant, decorated with carved wooden screens and delicate porcelain vases. Red silk lanterns cast everything in a warm, amber glow, but there's something unsettling about the way the shadows dance across the walls. Your bed is a low platform covered in embroidered cushions, and beside it sits a small lacquered table holding an ornate opium pipe and a collection of tiny jade containers. As your vision clears, you notice the sounds coming from beyond your door. Laughter that seems forced, conversations in multiple languages blending together, and underneath it all, the constant whisper of silk slippers against wooden floors. This is the House of Golden Butterflies, one of Shanghai's most exclusive flower houses, where wealthy men come to escape reality and lose themselves in smoke and fantasy. You try to remember how you got here, but your memories feel fragmented, like pieces of a broken mirror. There are flashes of a different life, glimpses of faces you can't quite place, but they slip away whenever you try to focus on them. What remains is the knowledge that you are trapped in this existence, bound by debts you didn't create and rules you didn't choose. The door slides open with barely a whisper, and an older woman enters. Her name is Mother Chen, and she owns this establishment with an iron fist wrapped in silk gloves. She's dressed in expensive robes, her graying hair pulled back in an elaborate style, decorated with gold pins and jade ornaments. Her face is painted with the traditional white powder and red lips, but her eyes are sharp and calculating. Mei Lin, you must prepare yourself, she says in Mandarin, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Master Harrison will arrive within the hour, and he specifically requested your company for the evening. Master Harrison. The name sends a chill through you, though you're not entirely sure why. He's a British textile merchant who has made his fortune importing silk and cotton through the port of Shanghai. He's also known for his particular tastes and his violent temper. When those tastes aren't satisfied, Mother Chen approaches the small table and begins preparing the opium pipe with practiced efficiency. The black, tar-like substance bubbles and hisses as she heats it over a small flame, and the sweet, nauseating smell grows stronger. You will smoke with him, as always, she instructs. But remember, you must remain alert enough to ensure his satisfaction. We cannot afford to lose such a valuable client. You want to refuse, to rebel against this life that has been forced upon you, but you understand the consequences. The house operates on a system of debt and dependency that keeps its residents trapped. Every meal, every piece of clothing, every stick of incense burned in your room adds to what you owe. The opium keeps you compliant, The debt keeps you imprisoned, and the constant threat of violence keeps you obedient. As Mother Chen leaves to attend to other preparations, you begin the ritual of getting ready. Your wardrobe consists of elaborate silk robes in jewel tones, each one worth more than most people earn in a year. Tonight, you select a deep emerald green robe embroidered with golden phoenixes, the birds seeming to come alive in the flickering lamplight. The makeup process is elaborate and time-consuming. You apply the traditional white face powder, creating a mask that transforms your natural features into something ethereal and otherworldly. Red paint on your lips, black kohl around your eyes, and delicate designs painted on your forehead complete the transformation. When you look in the mirror, you barely recognize yourself. Your hair must be arranged in an intricate style that will complement your outfit and please your client. Using wooden combs and jade pins, you create an elaborate arrangement that takes nearly an hour to complete. Each curl and twist has meaning in this world, signaling your status, availability, and the house you belong to. The sound of voices in the main parlor grows louder as evening approaches. You can hear men speaking in English, French, and Chinese, their laughter becoming more boisterous as wine and opium begin to take effect. The House of Golden Butterflies caters to Shanghai's international community, where East meets West in the most decadent ways possible. A soft knock interrupts your preparations. A young servant girl enters, barely 16 years old, her eyes downcast as she delivers a message. "Master Harrison has arrived," she whispers. Mother Chen requests your immediate presence in the Jade Room. The Jade Room is one of the house's most luxurious chambers, reserved for the wealthiest clients. As you make your way through the narrow corridors, you pass other rooms where business is already being conducted. Behind paper screens, you catch glimpses of shadows moving in intimate embraces, hear whispered conversations in languages you don't understand, and smell the constant presence of opium, smoke that permeates everything. The main parlor is a feast for the senses, designed to overwhelm visitors with its opulence. Carved wooden furniture inlaid with mother-of-pearl gleams under the light of dozens of lanterns. Silk tapestries depicting scenes from classical Chinese literature cover the walls, while incense burners fill the air with exotic fragrances. Musicians in the corner play traditional Chinese instruments, their melodies weaving through the conversations and laughter. You navigate through the crowd of clients and courtesans, each pairing representing a complex negotiation of desire, money, and power. Some men are clearly newcomers to Shanghai, their eyes wide with wonder and nervousness as they try to understand the customs and expectations. Others are regulars who move through the house with familiar confidence, knowing exactly what they want and how to get it. Master Harrison sits in the place of honor, a large cushioned chair positioned to overlook the entire parlor. He's a man in his 50s, well dressed in European fashion, but with touches that show his long residence in China. His jacket is made of Chinese silk, his pocket watch hangs from a chain of carved jade, and his fingers are adorned with rings bearing both Western and Eastern designs. When he sees you approaching, his face breaks into a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. "Ah, beautiful Mei Lin," he says in accented Mandarin, rising to greet you with a slight bow. "You look absolutely radiant this evening." The ritual of greeting is complex and must be performed perfectly. You lower your eyes demurely, offer a graceful bow, and speak the traditional words of welcome that have been drilled into you since your arrival at the house. Every gesture, every word, every expression is carefully calculated to please and entice. Master Harrison honors this humble servant with his presence. You say, your voice soft and melodious. "How may I serve your distinguished self this evening?" He gestures toward the Jade Room, and you lead the way, aware that dozens of eyes are watching your every move. In this world, reputation is everything, and a single misstep could result in punishment that would serve as an example to others. The Jade Room is dimly lit by lanterns with coloured glass, casting everything in a dreamlike hue. Low tables hold elaborate tea services, plates of delicate sweets, and of course, the ever-present opium pipes and accessories, cushions and silk throws are arranged to create intimate seating areas, while screens painted with erotic scenes provide both decoration and inspiration. Master Harrison settles himself comfortably and pats the cushion beside him, indicating where you should sit. The evening's entertainment will follow a familiar pattern: conversation, tea, perhaps some music or poetry, and gradually increasing intimacy as the opium takes effect. Your job is to be whatever he wants you to be, a living fantasy that will transport him from the harsh realities of colonial business into a world of silk and smoke and sensual pleasure. But as you take your place beside him and begin the delicate dance of seduction and entertainment, you can't shake the feeling that something is different tonight. There's a tension in the air, whispered conversations that stop abruptly when you pass, and glances between the house staff that suggest secrets being kept. The opium pipe is prepared with ceremonial care, the ritual as important as the drug itself. Master Harrison watches with obvious anticipation as you heat the precious substance and prepare it for consumption. The first taste always burns, coating your throat with bitter sweetness before the familiar numbness begins to spread through your body. As the smoke fills your lungs, the world takes on that familiar hazy quality that makes everything seem softer around the edges. Master Harrison inhales deeply from his own pipe, his eyes already beginning to glaze over with the telltale signs of the drug's embrace. But tonight, you force yourself to take smaller draws, keeping your mind sharper than usual. Something in the air tonight demands alertness. "Tell me about your dreams, Mei Lin," Harrison says, his voice already taking on the dreamy quality that opium brings. This is how it always begins, these conversations that dance around reality while diving deep into fantasy. You've learned that Western men, especially those far from home, crave these moments of imagined intimacy almost as much as physical pleasure. You begin weaving one of the many stories you've perfected over the months. Tales of childhood in a village that may or may not have existed. Dreams of traveling beyond the walls of Shanghai. Romantic notions that feed his need to see you as more than what you are. But as you speak, you notice movement in the shadows beyond the screen. Someone's listening, watching, waiting. The tea ceremony provides a welcome distraction. Your hands move with practiced grace, measuring the leaves, heating the water to precisely the right temperature, pouring with movements that have been refined into an art form. Every gesture is calculated to be beautiful, to reinforce the exotic fantasy that wealthy foreigners pay so handsomely to experience. "You move like water," Harrison murmurs, reaching out to trace a finger along your wrist. His touch is possessive, claiming, and you've learned to hide your revulsion behind a mask of demure pleasure. So different from the women back in Manchester, so graceful, so mysterious. This is the game you must play, pretending that his attention is an honor rather than a transaction, that your responses are genuine rather than carefully rehearsed performances. You've watched other courtesans who forgot this fundamental rule, who let their true feelings show. They disappeared quietly in the night, their debts transferred to less prestigious houses, or worse, the opium is beginning to work its familiar magic, and Harrison's conversation becomes more rambling, more philosophical. He speaks of his business dealings, the fortunes being made in Shanghai's rapid expanding foreign quarter, the opportunities that exist for those bold enough to seize them. You listen with apparent fascination, filing away information that might prove useful later. "Do you know what I love most about this city?" he asks, his words slightly slurred now. "It's a place where a man can become anyone he wants to be. The old rules don't apply here. Money talks louder than bloodlines. An opportunity doesn't care about your accent or which school you attended." You nod and smile, refilling his teacup with steady hands, but his words carry a weight that makes you uneasy. In Shanghai, the collision between East and West has created a world where traditional boundaries have blurred, but new forms of exploitation have emerged to take their place. You are living proof of how these opportunities he speaks of often come at someone else's expense. The music from the main parlor drifts through the walls, mixing with the sound of rain that has begun pattering against the windows. Autumn in Shanghai brings frequent storms, and tonight's weather seems to match the strange tension you've been feeling all evening. Lightning flashes occasionally, illuminating the room in stark white light that makes everything appear momentarily surreal. Harrison's hands become more exploratory as the evening progresses, and you respond with the practiced sensuality that has been drilled into you through months of training and experience. But part of your mind remains alert, watching, waiting for whatever disruption you sense approaching. The servants who normally glide silently through the halls seem more hurried tonight, and Mother Chen's usual iron composure showed cracks when she prepared you for this evening. "I have something special for you tonight," Harrison says, reaching into his jacket pocket. He produces a small silk pouch, handling it with the reverence usually reserved for the finest opium. This came from a contact in Hong Kong, much more potent than what you're accustomed to. The substance he reveals looks different from the usual black tar. This is crystalline, almost pure white, and it gives off an acrid smell that makes your nostrils burn. You've heard whispers of new drugs arriving from the West, chemicals created in European laboratories that promise even more intense experiences than traditional opium. The courtesans who've tried them describe euphoria beyond anything they've ever known, but also withdrawal symptoms that make opium addiction seem manageable by comparison. "I'm not sure I should," you begin. But Harrison's expression hardens immediately. The dreamy smile vanishes, replaced by something cold and calculating that reminds you exactly what kind of man you're dealing with. "Nonsense," he says firmly. "I've paid handsomely for your company tonight, and I expect you to share in all the experiences I provide. Surely a sophisticated woman like yourself isn't afraid of a little adventure." The threat in his words is unmistakable. Refusal would be interpreted as rejection, and rejection by a client of Harrison's stature would bring consequences you can't afford. Mother Chen has made it clear that maintaining the house's reputation depends on absolute compliance with client wishes, no matter how dangerous or degrading they might be. You watch as he prepares the strange substance with tools that look more like scientific equipment than traditional drug paraphernalia. A small glass pipe, a different kind of flame, precise measurements that speak of Western pharmaceutical knowledge rather than Eastern herbal tradition. The ritual feels wrong, too clinical, too removed from the ancient traditions that at least provided some sense of cultural context for the opium smoking. As you lift the pipe to your lips, a commotion erupts in the main parlor. Shouts in Chinese and English mix with the sound of running footsteps and slamming doors. Harrison freezes, the pleasant haze of his earlier opium consumption instantly replaced by sharp alertness. What the hell is going on out there? Before you can respond, the screen to your room slides open violently. Mother Chen stands in the doorway, her usually perfect composure completely shattered. Her white face powder is streaked with sweat, her elaborate hairstyle disheveled, and her eyes hold a terror you've never seen before. "All clients must leave immediately," she announces in English, her voice barely controlled. "There has been an incident. The authorities are coming." Harrison leaps to his feet with surprising agility for someone who should be deep in an opium stupor. "What kind of incident? What authorities?" "Foreign police, Chinese officials, military," Mother Chen replies, wringing her hands. "Someone has been murdered. A very important someone. They are searching all the flower houses, questioning everyone." The blood drains from Harrison's face. You realize that whatever he was planning with that strange white powder, whatever special arrangement he thought he had made for tonight, has suddenly become far more dangerous than simple drug use or sexual transaction. His reaction suggests knowledge of something much more serious than a typical evening's entertainment. Pack only what you absolutely need, Mother Chen continues, turning to you. All the girls must be ready to leave within minutes. Our protection agreements may not be enough this time. Through the windows, you can see lanterns moving in the street below. Official lanterns, carried by men in uniform who are systematically searching every building in the district. The sound of splintering wood suggests that doors are being broken down when cooperation isn't immediate enough. Harrison is already gathering his belongings, his movements sharp and purposeful. The dreamy merchant who had been reclining on silk cushions just moments ago has vanished, replaced by someone who clearly has experience with dangerous situations. The back exit, he mutters to himself. Through the garden to the river, but as he moves toward the door, you notice something that makes your blood freeze. The small silk pouch containing the strange white powder has fallen from his jacket, and scattered across the floor are not just the crystalline drugs, but also official-looking papers bearing government seals. Documents that no textile merchant should possess, written in what appears to be coded language. The pieces of the evening's puzzle suddenly snap into place. Harrison's unusual nervousness, the strange new drug, the specific timing of his visit, and now the official documents. You're not just a courtesan entertaining a client. You're a witness to something much more dangerous. Something involving espionage, drug trafficking, or worse. The sound of boots on wooden floors grows closer. Male voices shouting orders in multiple languages echo through the building. Whatever protection the House of Golden Butterflies usually enjoyed from local authorities has clearly been withdrawn tonight. The usual bribes and arrangements that keep places like this operating have suddenly become worthless. Mother Chen reappears in the doorway, this time accompanied by two of the house's male guards. Everyone out now! Use the tunnel system. Head for the safe houses in the French Quarter. Tunnel system. You had heard whispers of underground passages that connected the various entertainment establishments, escape routes built for exactly this kind of emergency. But you had never imagined you would need to use them, had never thought the carefully constructed world of the Flower House could collapse so completely and so quickly. As you gather the few possessions that truly matter to you, your mind races with possibilities. This could be the chance you've been waiting for, the opportunity to escape the debts and obligations that have kept you trapped. In the chaos of whatever investigation is unfolding, records might be lost, debts might be forgotten, and a clever person might slip away entirely. But escape also means venturing into a Shanghai night filled with unknown dangers, leaving behind the familiar horrors for uncertainties that might be far worse. The world outside the Flower House is not kind to women alone, especially women marked by the distinctive style and bearing that identifies them as courtesans. Harrison pushes past you toward the door, but stops suddenly when he realizes the compromising documents are scattered across the floor. His eyes meet yours, and in that moment, you both understand that you know too much. You've seen the papers, witnessed his panic, observed his familiarity with escape procedures that suggest this isn't his first crisis. The sound of splintering wood grows closer, and voices in the corridor indicate that the search has reached your floor. Time has run out for careful decisions and calculated risks. Whatever choice you make in the next few seconds will determine whether you survive the night, and whether you remain trapped in this life or find a way to something different. The decision crystallizes in an instant. You snatch up one of the scattered documents before Harrison can stop you, tucking it into the folds of your robe. As you move toward the hidden panel, Mother Chen is frantically opening behind a carved wooden cabinet. The passage beyond is narrow and dark, barely wide enough for a single person, with rough stone walls that speak of construction far older than the elegant flower house above Harrison lunges toward you, his face twisted with desperation. But the sound of boots in the corridor freezes him in place. The authorities are too close now. He has seconds to decide between pursuing you and ensuring his own escape. Self-preservation wins, and he disappears through a different exit as official voices boom just outside your door. You slip into the tunnel system as the first uniformed men burst into the Jade Room behind you. The passage is pitch black, forcing you to feel your way along damp stone walls while trying to move silently despite the silk slippers that were never designed for underground navigation. The air is stale and thick, carrying scents of mold and decades of hidden activities. Other figures move through the darkness around you. Whispered conversations in multiple dialects echo off the tunnel walls as courtesans, clients, and house staff all flee through different branches of this underground maze. Some passages lead to other entertainment establishments, others to private residences where wealthy patrons maintain discreet apartments, and still others to the docks where boats wait to carry people beyond the reach of Shanghai's various law enforcement agencies. The tunnel you've chosen slopes steadily downward, and the sound of running water grows stronger with each step. You're heading toward the Huangpu River, following an escape route that probably dates back centuries to when these passages served different kinds of fugitives. The document hidden in your robe feels like it's burning against your skin, a reminder that you now carry secrets that could prove either invaluable or fatal after what feels like hours but is probably only minutes. You emerge through a concealed entrance into a storage building near the waterfront. The rain has intensified, turning the unpaved streets into rivers of mud that will make tracking difficult. Lightning illuminates the scene in stark flashes, revealing a world transformed from the elegant opium parlors into something far more primitive and dangerous. The foreign quarter of Shanghai stretches before you, a maze of warehouses, shipping offices, and cramped residential buildings where different nationalities cluster together in uneasy proximity. British merchants live alongside American traders, French diplomats share neighborhoods with German industrialists, and everyone maintains the careful balance of cooperation and competition that defines colonial commerce. But tonight, that balance has been shattered. Military patrols move through the streets in organized formations, their lanterns cutting through the darkness as they systematically search every building. The usual nighttime activities of the quarter have been suspended, replaced by an atmosphere of martial law that suggests whatever incident triggered this crackdown involves more than simple criminal activity. You need shelter, clothes that won't immediately identify you as a courtesan, and most importantly, you need to understand what's written on the document you've stolen. The paper could be worthless, or it could be valuable enough to buy your freedom from the debts that have defined your existence. But first, you need to survive until morning. The safe house Mother Chen mentioned is somewhere in the French Quarter, but reaching it means crossing several miles of patrolled streets while wearing clothes that mark you as clearly as a uniform. Your elaborate hairstyle, distinctive makeup, and silk robes announce your profession to anyone who sees you, making anonymity impossible. A group of drunken sailors stumbles out of a late-night tavern, their voices loud and aggressive in the way that alcohol makes men when they're far from home and surrounded by people they consider inferior. They spot you immediately, their conversation shifting from complaints about shipping schedules to crude speculation about your availability and pricing. "Look what we have here," one of them calls out in English, his accent marking him as Australian or perhaps South African. A little butterfly got caught in the rain? You understand enough English to know you're in immediate danger, but running would only attract more attention from the patrols. Instead, you lower your eyes and attempt to blend into the shadows of a doorway, hoping they'll lose interest and continue on their way. But alcohol and opportunity have made them bold, and they begin moving in your direction with obvious intent. The sound of approaching hoofbeats saves you from immediate assault, but creates new dangers. A patrol of mounted police rounds the corner, their uniforms identifying them as members of International Settlement's mixed force. The sailors scatter immediately, recognizing the wisdom of avoiding official attention while engaging in activities that might violate public order statutes. But the patrol's attention now focuses on you, a lone woman in courtesan's dress, wandering the streets during what is clearly an official emergency. The lead officer, a British sergeant with the weathered face of someone who has spent years in colonial service, dismounts and approaches with the casual authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "You're out rather late for a lady of your profession," he says in heavily accented Mandarin, his tone suggesting familiarity with Shanghai's entertainment districts. "Shouldn't you be safely tucked away in whatever establishment employs you?" The question carries multiple layers of threat. He's offering you a chance to explain yourself, but his hand rests casually on his weapon, and his men have positioned themselves to prevent any attempt at flight. Your answer will determine whether you're escorted back to whatever remains of the House of Golden Butterflies, taken to a detention facility for questioning, or worse. This humble woman became separated from her companions during the disturbance, you reply, using the formal speech patterns that mark educated courtesans. "I seek only to return home safely." The sergeant studies your face in the lamplight, noting details that probably tell him more about your situation than you'd prefer. Your makeup, while smeared by rain and exertion, is of the highest quality. Your robes, despite being soaked and muddy, are clearly expensive. Everything about your appearance suggests association with the kind of establishment that caters to wealthy foreign clients rather than local working men. "Home," he repeats thoughtfully. "And where might that be exactly?" This is the crucial moment. You could attempt to return to the Flower House district, assuming any of the establishments are still operating after tonight's raids. You could claim association with one of the foreign compounds, hoping your appearance and language skills might make the lie believable. Or you could tell some version of the truth and hope that honesty might earn you unexpected mercy. But before you can answer, a commotion erupts from the direction of the waterfront. Shouts in Chinese and English mix with the sound of gunshots, suggesting that someone has been caught attempting to flee by boat. The patrol's attention shifts immediately toward this new crisis, and the sergeant remounts his horse with practiced efficiency. "Stay off the streets tonight," he warns, before spurring his mount toward the disturbance. "This isn't a safe time for anyone to be wandering about, especially women in your line of work." You watch the patrol disappear into the rainy darkness, their hoofbeats fading into the general chaos of the night. The brief encounter has reminded you that survival depends on more than just avoiding the authorities conducting the raids. The entire social structure of Shanghai's foreign quarter operates on clearly defined roles and expectations, and anyone who doesn't fit those patterns becomes automatically suspicious. A courtesan belongs in a flower house, entertaining clients under the protection and control of an establishment owner. A courtesan wandering alone through the streets at night represents either escaped property or evidence of some larger disruption to the carefully maintained order. Either way, she becomes a problem that authorities feel obligated to solve, usually in ways that don't benefit the woman involved. The French Quarter offers your best hope of temporary sanctuary, but reaching it requires crossing through areas where different national jurisdictions create overlapping authority and conflicting legal systems. What's perfectly legal in the British settlement might be criminal in the French concession, and what's ignored by Chinese authorities might provoke immediate action from foreign police. You begin moving through the maze of back streets and alleyways, staying close to walls and doorways that provide concealment from both patrols and the occasional groups of men who seem to be conducting their own searches. For reasons you can only guess at, the document in your robe feels heavier with each step, as if the secrets it contains are adding physical weight to your already difficult journey. The rain continues falling steadily, turning the unpaved roads into treacherous channels of mud and refuse that make silent movement nearly impossible. Your silk slippers, designed for indoor use on polished wooden floors, offer no protection against the harsh realities of Shanghai's streets. Each step becomes a careful negotiation between speed and stealth, between the need to reach safety quickly and the necessity of avoiding detection. As you navigate through the darkness, fragments of conversation drift from open windows and doorways. Multiple languages blend together, creating a linguistic symphony that reflects Shanghai's international character. English merchants complain about disrupted business schedules. French diplomats discuss the political implications of whatever incident has triggered tonight's emergency. German industrialists worry about the impact on their manufacturing operations. Chinese voices, when you can hear them clearly, speak of changes coming to the city that will affect everyone. The foreign settlements of Shanghai exist in a strange legal twilight, governed by treaties and agreements that create pockets of extraterritorial jurisdiction. Within Chinese territory, foreign nationals accused of crimes are tried in their own courts under their own laws, while Chinese citizens accused of crimes against foreigners face a different legal system entirely. Tonight's raids suggest that this carefully balanced system is under stress, possibly breaking down entirely. You reach a crossroads where 4 different streets meet, each leading toward a different national quarter. British flags hang from buildings to the east. French tricolours mark territory to the west, and German commercial signs point north toward the industrial district south, leads back toward the Chinese city, where traditional authority still holds sway, but where a woman in your condition would face different, but equally serious dangers. The choice of direction will determine more than just your immediate destination. Each quarter offers different opportunities and dangers, different types of people who might help or harm you, and different ways of life that could define your future if you manage to survive the night. The document hidden in your robe might be more valuable in some places than others, depending on what secrets it contains and who would be willing to pay for them. A figure emerges from the shadows near a shuttered shop, moving with the careful silence of someone who has learned to navigate dangerous streets without attracting attention. As the person draws closer, you recognize the distinctive silhouette of another courtesan, her elaborate hairstyle and silk robes marking her as clearly as your own appearance marks you. Sister, she whispers in Mandarin, using the term of address that courtesans employ when speaking to each other. Are you also fleeing from the golden butterflies? You nod cautiously, uncertain whether this encounter represents salvation or additional danger. Other courtesans could be allies in a situation like this, sharing information and resources that might help everyone survive, but they could also be competitors for limited safe havens. Or worse, they could be working with authorities or criminal organizations that profit from the chaos. My name is Jade Lotus, she continues, moving closer so that conversation becomes possible without raising voices. I escaped through the kitchen when the soldiers came. Do you know what they were looking for? The question carries weight beyond simple curiosity. If the raids were targeted at specific individuals or activities, that information could determine which escape routes remain viable and which areas of the city offer genuine safety. But sharing what you know about Harrison's documents and the strange white powder could also make you a target for people who prefer witnesses to remain silent permanently. Someone important was killed, you reply carefully, repeating the explanation Mother Chen had given without adding your own observations about Harrison's suspicious behavior. The authorities are searching all the flower houses. Jade Lotus nods grimly. I heard similar things from the other girls, but this feels different from the usual raids. Usually they come for specific people or to collect their monthly payments. Tonight they seem to be looking for something particular. Her observation matches your own sense that tonight's events involve more than routine law enforcement or the periodic crackdowns that entertainment districts experience when political pressure builds for moral reform. The systematic nature of the searches, the involvement of multiple jurisdictions, and the obvious desperation of people like Harrison suggest connections to larger political or economic interests. Where are you heading? Jade Lotus asks, glancing nervously at the patrol lights visible in the distance. The question forces you to make a decision that could determine both your immediate safety and your long-term prospects. Traveling together would provide mutual protection and shared resources. But it would also mean sharing whatever opportunities arise and trusting someone whose motives and loyalties remain unknown. In a world where survival often depends on betraying others before they betray you, partnership becomes a dangerous gamble. But as another patrol approaches from the direction you had been planning to take, the decision becomes easier. Two women traveling together might attract different attention than a lone courtesan wandering the streets, and Jade Lotus clearly has her own knowledge of Shanghai's hidden geography that could complement your own understanding of the city's power structures. The French Quarter, you whisper back. There are safe houses there, places where questions aren't asked as long as payment is provided. She smiles grimly and gestures toward a narrow alley that leads away from the approaching patrol. I know a route that avoids the main checkpoints, but we'll need to move quickly, and we'll need to trust each other completely. Trust. In a world built on deception, manipulation, and exploitation, the concept seems almost quaint. But as the sound of official voices grows closer, and the alternatives become increasingly limited, trust becomes less a choice than a necessity. You follow Jade Lotus into the darkness, carrying secrets that could prove valuable or fatal, heading toward an uncertain future that represents your first real choice in longer than you can remember. The night is far from over, and the streets of Shanghai hold dangers you haven't even imagined yet. But for the first time since waking up in that opium-scented room, you're moving towards something, rather than simply running away. The document hidden in your robe pulses with possibility, and the woman leading you through the maze of back streets represents the first genuine human connection you've experienced in this strange existence. Whatever comes next, you're no longer facing it alone. Jade Lotus leads you through a labyrinth of narrow passages between buildings, her movements quick and confident despite the treacherous conditions underfoot. The rain has transformed the packed earth into slippery mud that threatens to send you sprawling with each step, and your silk slippers offer no grip on the increasingly treacherous surface. "Stay close," she whispers over her shoulder, pausing at the corner of a building to check for patrols. The French guards change shifts in 10 minutes. If we time this correctly, we can slip past their checkpoint while they're distracted with the handover. Her knowledge of patrol schedules suggests experience with this kind of escape, making you wonder what circumstances had taught her such detailed information about Shanghai's security arrangements. But questions will have to wait. The immediate priority is reaching whatever sanctuary the French Quarter might offer before your luck runs out entirely. The alley opens onto a wider street lined with European-style buildings that house various commercial enterprises serving the foreign community. Even at this late hour, some establishments remain active, their windows glowing with warm light that creates pools of visibility you must carefully avoid. A German beer hall echoes with the sounds of late-night revelry, while a British banking office shows signs of unusual activity that suggests tonight's crisis extends far beyond the entertainment districts. Jade Lotus suddenly grabs your arm, pulling you into the shadowed doorway of a closed shop. A group of men in civilian clothes moves past on the opposite side of the street, their purposeful stride and alert postures marking them as plainclothes investigators rather than ordinary citizens. Each man carries himself with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority, and their coordinated movements suggest professional training that goes beyond routine police work. Secret police. Jade Lotus breathes in your ear, her voice barely audible above the rain. Both Chinese and foreign. This is much bigger than a simple murder investigation. The implications send a chill through you that has nothing to do with your rain-soaked clothing. Secret police involvement suggests political dimensions to whatever has triggered tonight's raids, connections to espionage, international incidents, or threats to the delicate balance of power that keeps Shanghai's foreign settlements functioning. The document hidden in your robe suddenly feels even more dangerous, a potential death sentence if it contains the wrong kind of information. After the investigators disappear around a corner, you continue moving through the maze of streets and alleyways. The architecture begins to shift subtly as you enter areas with stronger French influence. Buildings show touches of Parisian style, adapted to Shanghai's climate, with covered walkways and ornate ironwork that speaks of European sensibilities imposed on Chinese geography. The sound of music drifts from an establishment ahead, a piano playing melancholy melodies that seem perfectly suited to the rain-soaked night. As you draw closer, you can see it's a small cafe that caters to French expatriates, the kind of place where artists, journalists, and political refugees gather to discuss literature, philosophy, and the complex realities of colonial life. "That's where we're going," Jade Lotus says, pointing toward the cafe. Madame Dubois runs a boarding house above it. She asks no questions and accepts payment in various forms. Many of the girls have used her services when situations became complicated. The cafe's windows reveal a warm, inviting interior that contrasts sharply with the chaos unfolding in the streets outside. Patrons sit at small tables, engaged in animated conversations over wine and coffee, seemingly oblivious to the military activity that has transformed the rest of the quarter into a virtual war zone. The scene appears so normal that you wonder if you've somehow stumbled into a different world entirely. But as you observe more carefully, you notice subtle signs that suggest the cafe's patrons are more aware of current events than they appear. Conversations pause when strangers pass by the windows. Several men keep their hats pulled low over their faces, and more than one woman seems to be watching the street with unusual attention. This is a place where people come when they need to disappear temporarily, when normal channels of commerce and communication have become too dangerous. Jade Lotus approaches the cafe's side entrance with familiar confidence, tapping on the glass in a specific pattern that obviously serves as some kind of recognition signal. After a moment, the door opens to reveal a middle-aged French woman with steel-grey hair and sharp eyes that quickly assess both of your appearances. "Deux papillons dans la tempête," she says quietly, in French, then switches to accented Mandarin. "Two butterflies in the storm. Come quickly, before someone sees you standing there." Madame Dubois ushers you through a narrow hallway that leads past the cafe's main room toward a staircase at the back of the building. You catch glimpses of the establishment's patrons as you pass, noting the mixture of nationalities and social classes that suggests this place serves as neutral ground for people from many different backgrounds. The staircase leads to a series of small rooms on the building's upper floors, each one furnished simply but comfortably with the basic necessities for temporary residence. Madame Dubois opens the door to a room that contains two narrow beds, a wash basin, and a small table with chairs. The accommodations are modest compared to the luxury of the flower house, but they represent something precious that you haven't experienced in months: privacy and relative safety. "You may stay here tonight," Madame Dubois says, lighting a small oil lamp that casts warm shadows on the plain walls. "Payment can be discussed in the morning when circumstances are clearer. For now, you should rest and clean yourselves. There are clothes in the wardrobe that will make you less conspicuous when you venture out again." She pauses at the door, studying your faces with the calculating expression of someone who has learned to read people's situations quickly and accurately. "Whatever trouble has brought you here, it would be wise to remain inside until the current unpleasantness passes. The authorities are being unusually thorough tonight." After she leaves, you and Jade Lotus stand in the small room, suddenly aware that you're safe for the first time since the evening's chaos began. The realization brings both relief and uncertainty about what comes next. You're no longer running through dangerous streets, but you're also no longer following the familiar routines that have defined your existence for months. Jade Lotus moves to the wash basin and begins the process of removing her elaborate makeup, transforming herself from exotic courtesan to ordinary young woman with surprising speed. Without the white face powder and dramatic eye paint, she appears younger and more vulnerable. Someone who might have been born to a respectable family before circumstances led her to the flower houses. "We should change clothes immediately," she says, practically, opening the wardrobe to examine the selection of garments Madame Dubois had mentioned. These robes mark us as clearly as if we were carrying signs announcing our profession. The available clothing consists of simple Western-style dresses and Chinese peasant outfits that would allow you to blend in with Shanghai's working population. The transformation from silk and embroidery to plain cotton and wool represents more than just a change of costume. It's a step toward becoming someone different, someone with options beyond the narrow confines of courtesan life. As you help each other out of the elaborate robes and hairstyles that had defined your evening, the document you've been carrying falls to the floor. Jade Lotus stares at it curiously, noting the official seals and foreign writing that mark it as something far more significant than a simple business letter. "What is that?" she asks, her voice carrying a mixture of curiosity and concern. You pick up the paper carefully, aware that this moment represents a crucial decision point. You could hide the document's significance, treating it as a personal matter that doesn't concern your new companion. Or you could share the information, potentially gaining an ally, but also creating complications that might endanger both of you. The document itself remains largely mysterious to you. The writing appears to be in English, with portions in what might be German or another European language. Official seals suggest governmental authority, while the secretive manner in which Harrison had been handling it implies information that powerful people want to keep hidden. "Something I took from a client's room," you say carefully. "It might be valuable, or it might be worthless. I won't know until I find someone who can read the foreign writing." Jade Lotus nods thoughtfully, understanding the implications without requiring detailed explanation. In the world of the flower houses, information often proves more valuable than money, and documents bearing official seals represent potential opportunities for those clever enough to exploit them properly. "There's someone in the cafe downstairs who might be able to help," she says. "A journalist from Paris who writes for several European newspapers. He's been investigating corruption in the foreign settlements, and he pays well for information that supports his stories." The suggestion offers both opportunity and risk. A journalist might indeed be able to translate the document and assess its value, but journalists also publish information that can reach dangerous people. If the document contains secrets that powerful individuals want to keep hidden, involving a newspaper reporter could escalate the situation beyond your ability to control. But as you consider the alternatives, you realize that knowledge is useless without understanding. The document represents potential freedom from debt and dependency, but only if you can determine what it actually contains and who might be willing to pay for that information. "We should be careful," you say finally. "If this paper is valuable enough to justify tonight's raids, then it's dangerous enough to get us killed." Jade Lotus finishes changing into a plain cotton dress that transforms her appearance completely. Without the elaborate styling that marked her as a courtesan, she could be any young woman in Shanghai, a shop girl, a factory worker, or a domestic servant in one of the foreign households. The transformation demonstrates how much of identity depends on costume and performance rather than inherent characteristics. You select a similar outfit, trading silk and embroidery for practical cotton that will allow free movement and attract minimal attention. The change feels symbolic as well as practical, representing a step away from the carefully controlled existence of the flower house towards something undefined but potentially liberating. The rain continues drumming against the window, creating a steady rhythm that masks the sounds of activity in the streets below. Occasionally, voices or footsteps echo from the cafe beneath your room, reminding you that you're surrounded by people whose own stories of displacement and survival have brought them to this temporary refuge. "I need to tell you something," Jade Lotus says as she sits on one of the narrow beds. "My real name isn't Jade Lotus. It's Chen Wei Mei, and I wasn't always a courtesan." The revelation doesn't surprise you, since few women in the flower houses had chosen their circumstances freely. But her willingness to share personal information suggests a level of trust that could prove either valuable or dangerous. depending on what secrets she might expect you to reveal in return. My father was a silk merchant, she continues. Not wealthy, but respectable. When his business failed and creditors seized everything, I was sold to pay his debts. That was 3 years ago. Her story echoes countless similar tales throughout Shanghai, where economic desperation and family obligations force young women into circumstances they never could have imagined. The collision between traditional Chinese social structures and the rapid changes brought by foreign influence creates situations where respectability can disappear overnight, and survival requires adaptations that previous generations never had to consider. What about you? She asks. What brought you to Mother Chen's establishment? The question forces you to confront the strange gaps in your own memory. The sense of existing in someone else's life without clear recollection of how you arrived there. The memories that feel most real involve recent months at the Flower House, while earlier experiences remain frustratingly vague, like trying to remember dreams after waking. I'm not entirely sure, you admit. My memories before the Flower House are unclear. Sometimes I think I remember a different life, but I can't tell if those are real memories or dreams created by opium. Chen Wei Mei. No diez, understanding. The smoke affects everyone differently. Some girls say it helps them forget painful experiences. Others claim it shows them visions of lives they might have lived. The important thing is deciding who you want to be from now on. Her words carry weight beyond their simple meaning. In a city like Shanghai, where traditional identities collapse and reform constantly, the opportunity to reinvent yourself appears regularly for those bold enough to seize it. The chaos of tonight's events has created exactly such an opportunity, a chance to step away from the roles that circumstances had imposed and choose a different path forward. A soft knock at the door interrupts your conversation. Madame Dubois enters carrying a tray with tea and simple food, rice, vegetables, and a small portion of fish that represents luxury compared to the limited diet allowed to courtesans who needed to maintain specific physical appearances. Eat quickly, she advises in her mixture of French-accented Mandarin. The journalist I mentioned will be available to speak with you shortly, but only if you're interested in his services. He pays fairly for useful information, but he also asks probing questions that some people prefer to avoid. The decision moment has arrived sooner than expected. You could spend the night resting and plan your next moves carefully in the morning light, or you could take advantage of immediate opportunity, risking exposure but potentially gaining the knowledge and resources needed to escape your current situation entirely. Chen Wei Mei looks at you expectantly, clearly willing to follow your lead, but also making it clear that the choice and its consequences will be primarily yours to bear. The document in your hands feels heavier than ever, pregnant with possibilities that could lead to freedom or destruction, depending on how skillfully you navigate the next few hours. Outside, the sounds of official activity continue as patrols search through the night for whatever evidence or individuals they believe are connected to the evening's mysterious incident. Time is working against you in ways you don't fully understand, but also creating opportunities that might not exist once normal order is restored to the city. You take a deep breath, tasting the mixture of tea, rain, and lingering opium smoke that defines this strange night. Tomorrow, Shanghai will still be a city divided between competing authorities and conflicting loyalties. But tonight, in this small room above a French cafe, you have the chance to begin writing your own story instead of simply surviving the story someone else has written for you. The journalist waits downstairs, offering knowledge that could transform a stolen document into genuine freedom. Chen Wei Mei sits beside you, representing the possibility of alliance and shared risk in a world where isolation often means destruction. And somewhere in the rainy streets beyond these walls, the consequences of your choices are already beginning to unfold. in ways that will determine not just your immediate survival, but the entire trajectory of whatever life you manage to build from the ashes of this extraordinary night. The decision crystallizes as you look at the document in your hands. Knowledge is power, but only if you understand what you possess. You stand, smoothing the simple cotton dress that has already begun to feel more natural than silk robes ever did. "Let's meet this journalist," you tell Chen Wei-mei. "But we tell him only what serves our purposes." She nods, understanding the delicate balance required. In Shanghai's web of competing interests, information flows like currency, but revealing too much can bankrupt you permanently. Madame Dubois leads you down a narrow back staircase that emerges behind the cafe's main room. The journalist sits alone at a corner table, positioned to observe both the front entrance and the street beyond. He's younger than you expected, perhaps 30, with the pale complexion of someone who spends more time with books than sunlight. His clothes mark him as European, but not wealthy. Quality fabric showing signs of long wear and careful maintenance. "Mademoiselle," he says in French accented English, rising slightly as you approach. "I am Henri Beaumont, correspondent for Le Figaro, and several other publications. Madame Dubois suggests you may have information relevant to tonight's unusual activities." You settle into chairs that allow quick access to multiple exit routes, a precaution that has become second nature after months in the flower houses. The cafe's other patrons continue their conversations, but you notice several glances in your direction that suggest your presence has been noted and catalogued. "We might," you reply carefully in English, testing his reaction to your language skills. "But first, we need to understand what tonight's events actually concern." Beaumont's eyebrows rise slightly, clearly not expecting such directness from women dressed as working-class Chinese. "You speak excellent English for, may I ask your occupations?" "Former entertainers," Chen Wei-mei interjects smoothly. "Recent circumstances have encouraged career changes." The journalist nods with the understanding of someone who has learned not to probe too deeply into personal histories in a city like Shanghai. Then you'll appreciate the value of accurate information. Tonight's raids stem from the murder of Friedrich von Kellermann, a German industrialist with significant interests in Shanghai's pharmaceutical trade. The name means nothing to you, but the mention of pharmaceuticals creates an uncomfortable connection to Harrison's strange white powder. You keep your expression neutral while processing this information. "Von Kellermann was found dead in his private office 3 hours ago," Beaumont continues. "Shot twice, his safe emptied, and several important documents missing. The authorities believe the killer may have taken refuge in the entertainment district." "What kind of documents?" you ask, though you suspect you already carry part of the answer. "Trade agreements, shipping manifests, correspondence with government officials." Von Kellermann was involved in importing chemicals for legitimate pharmaceutical manufacturing, but there were persistent rumors about side businesses involving less legal substances. The pieces begin forming a clearer picture. Harrison's strange powder, his official documents, his familiarity with escape procedures. He wasn't just a textile merchant amusing himself in the flower houses. He was part of a network that used legitimate business to mask illegal drug trafficking. And tonight, someone had decided to eliminate a key player. Chen Wei-mei leans forward slightly. "What would such documents be worth to someone who possessed them?" Beaumont studies her face carefully. "That would depend on their contents. Evidence of corruption could be valuable to journalists or reform-minded officials. Proof of illegal activities might interest competitors, or law enforcement details about supply networks could be worth fortunes to the right buyers." You reach into your dress and withdraw the document, placing it on the table between you. "Would something like this qualify?" The journalist's eyes widen as he recognizes the official seals and formal formatting. He examines the paper without touching it, clearly understanding that possession could be as dangerous as ignorance. "May I?" he asks, and at your nod, he lifts the document to study it more closely. His expression grows increasingly serious as he reads, occasionally muttering French phrases under his breath. "This is a shipping manifest," he says finally, "but not for textiles or conventional pharmaceuticals. These chemical names, morphine derivatives, cocaine compounds, synthetic substances I don't recognize. The quantities listed would supply Shanghai's entire illegal drug trade for months." Your heart pounds as the implications become clear. You haven't stolen routine business correspondence. You've taken evidence of industrial-scale drug manufacturing and distribution that could destroy powerful people and organizations throughout Shanghai's international community. The consignment described here was scheduled to arrive next week, Beaumont continues. But according to this manifest, it's already been pre-sold to buyers throughout Asia. Someone has built a distribution network that extends from Shanghai to Hong Kong, Singapore, Manila, and beyond. Chen Wei-mei grips your arm. How much would people pay to obtain this information, or to ensure it disappears forever? More than you could spend in several lifetimes, Beaumont replies grimly, but also enough to guarantee that everyone involved in taking it will be hunted until they're found. The cafe suddenly feels less secure. Its warm lighting and civilized conversation insufficient protection against the magnitude of what you've stumbled into. Through the rain-streaked windows, you can see patrol lights moving with renewed intensity, suggesting that the search for von Kellermann's killer and his missing documents has escalated significantly. Who would want this information most, you ask, though you're already beginning to understand the terrible complexity of your situation. Von Kellermann's competitors, who could use it to destroy his network and claim his territory. Government officials, who could use it to expose corruption or protect their own involvement. Foreign intelligence services, who could use it to influence Chinese policy or embarrass rival nations. Criminal organizations, who could use it to eliminate competition or expand their own operations. Each possibility represents a different path forward, but also different risks that could prove fatal if misjudged. The document has transformed you from escaped courtesan to key player in conflicts involving international commerce, government corruption, and organized crime. There's something else, Beaumont adds, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Von Kellermann wasn't working alone. His operation required protection from Chinese officials, cooperation from foreign authorities, and partnership with established criminal networks. Whoever killed him was either incredibly brave or incredibly well-connected. Or both, you think, remembering Harrison's confident familiarity with escape procedures and his obvious terror when the raids began. The British merchant had been part of von Kellermann's network, but tonight he had become either a target or a betrayer. Chen Wei-mei voices the question you're both thinking: what happens to us now? That depends on what you want to achieve, Beaumont replies. I can offer several thousand yuan for exclusive rights to this story, enough to leave Shanghai and start new lives elsewhere, but publication would make you visible to everyone involved, both allies and enemies. The alternative remains unspoken but obvious. Sell the information directly to one of the interested parties, potentially earning far more money but also accepting greater personal risk, or attempt to use the document as leverage for protection and position within whatever organization emerges from the current chaos. A commotion outside interrupts your deliberations. Through the cafe windows, you can see uniformed figures surrounding the building, their movements coordinated and purposeful. The casual conversation throughout the establishment dies as patrons recognize the signs of an impending raid. Back entrance, Madame Dubois calls softly from behind the counter, her voice carrying urgent warning without creating panic. But as you start to rise, Beaumont grabs your wrist. Wait, look at their uniforms carefully. You peer through the rain-distorted glass, noting details that had escaped your initial observation. These aren't the mixed patrol forces you'd encountered earlier. They're wearing the distinctive insignia of German commercial security, private guards employed by major trading companies to protect their interests. Von Kellermann's people, Beaumont breathes. They're not here to arrest anyone. They're here to recover stolen property and eliminate witnesses. The cafe's patrons begin moving toward exits with the practiced efficiency of people who have survived previous emergencies, but their movements lack the panic that would attract additional attention from the street. This is clearly not the first time Madame Dubois' establishment has faced official interest. You fold the document and secure it within your dress, the paper feeling like it burns against your skin. Every choice now carries potentially fatal consequences, but inaction guarantees destruction. The men surrounding the building represent one faction in a complex struggle, but they're not the only players seeking what you possess. Is there another way out? Chen Wei Mei asks Madame Dubois, who nods toward a door behind the bar that you hadn't noticed before. Tunnel system, she replies. Connects to buildings throughout this district, but once you enter you can't return here. Too dangerous for everyone. The decision point has arrived with brutal suddenness. You can attempt escape through underground passages that might lead to safety or might deliver you directly to other enemies. You can try to negotiate with the German security forces, hoping that cooperation might earn mercy rather than elimination. Or you can gamble everything on Beaumont's offer, trusting a journalist's promise of protection in exchange for information that could reshape Shanghai's criminal landscape. Outside, the security forces begin moving toward the building's entrances, their discipline and equipment suggesting military training rather than simple corporate guards. These are professionals who understand urban warfare and have experience conducting operations in hostile territory. The cafe's warm atmosphere has transformed into something tense and desperate, with conversations replaced by whispered consultations and quick farewells. Several patrons produce weapons from concealed locations, suggesting that tonight's refuge housed more dangerous individuals than their civilized appearance had indicated. Choose quickly, Beaumont urges. In 30 seconds, your options will be significantly reduced. Through the back windows, you can see additional figures taking positions in the alley, cutting off what had seemed like obvious escape routes. The security operation is comprehensive and professionally executed, designed to prevent exactly the kind of flight you had been planning. Chen Wei Mei looks to you for guidance, her trust both touching and terrifying given the magnitude of the decision required. The document in your dress represents potential liberation or certain destruction, depending on how skillfully you navigate the next few minutes. The sound of boots on wooden steps echoes from the cafe's main entrance as the security forces begin their systematic search. Time has run out for careful deliberation and strategic planning. Whatever choice you make now will determine not just your immediate survival, but the entire trajectory of lives that have already been transformed beyond recognition by a single night's chaos. You take Chen Wei Mei's hand and move toward Madame Dubois' hidden door, carrying secrets that powerful people will kill to protect, and information that could free you from the debts and dependencies that have defined your existence. The tunnels ahead lead into darkness that might conceal salvation or destruction, but they represent the only path forward that doesn't require surrendering control of your fate to others. Behind you, Beaumont gathers his papers with the calm efficiency of someone accustomed to covering dangerous stories. Whether he'll survive to publish whatever account emerges from tonight's events remains to be seen, but his willingness to pay for information has confirmed the value of what you carry. The hidden door opens onto stone steps that descend into passages older than Shanghai's foreign settlements. Corridors that have sheltered smugglers, revolutionaries, and refugees throughout the city's turbulent history. As you follow Chen Wei Mei into the underground maze, you carry more than just stolen documents. You carry the possibility of writing your own story in a world that has never allowed women like you to hold the pen. The chase through Shanghai's hidden arteries is about to begin, and the stakes extend far beyond your personal freedom to encompass the future of international crime, government corruption, and the delicate balance of power that keeps one of Asia's most important cities functioning. Every step forward takes you deeper into conflicts you barely understand, but also closer to opportunities that could transform everything about the lives you've been forced to live. The opium parlors and flower houses seem like distant memories now, replaced by immediate dangers that demand skills you never knew you possessed. But somewhere in the darkness ahead lies the possibility of becoming someone new, someone who chooses her own risks and writes her own rules in a city built on the dreams and nightmares of people seeking to escape their pasts. The underground passages stretch endlessly in every direction, a labyrinth of stone corridors that predate Shanghai's modern transformation. Your footsteps echo softly against damp walls as you follow Chen Wei-mei, through turns that seem random but are guided by markings only she understands. The air grows thicker with each step, carrying scents of river water, decay, and the accumulated secrets of decades. These tunnels weren't built for the foreign settlements above. They're remnants of old Shanghai, constructed when the city served different masters and harbored different kinds of fugitives. Smugglers used them to move opium inland from the docks. Revolutionaries hid weapons and planned uprisings in chambers carved from living rock. Now they shelter two women carrying information that could topple governments and destroy criminal empires. "Stay close," Chen Wei-mei whispers, pausing at an intersection where four passages converge. The tunnels connect to buildings throughout the quarter, but some lead to dead ends or flood chambers that trap the unwary. Crew, you press the document closer against your ribs, feeling its sharp edges through the cotton dress. Above your heads, the sounds of the search continue. Boots on floorboards, furniture being overturned, voices demanding answers that terrified people cannot provide. The German security forces are thorough and systematic, but they're searching a world they don't fully understand. The passage begins to slope upward, and fresher air suggests you're approaching another exit point. But Chen Wei-mei suddenly freezes, raising her hand in a gesture that makes your blood run cold. Voices echo from ahead. Not the panicked conversations of other refugees, but the calm, professional tones of men conducting organized searches. "They're in the tunnels too," she breathes, pressing against the stone wall. Multiple teams, coordinated search pattern. Someone gave them detailed maps. The implications hit you like physical blows. This isn't a hasty response to robbery and murder. It's a carefully planned operation that anticipated exactly the kind of escape you're attempting. Someone within Shanghai's underground networks has betrayed the tunnel system's secrets, or worse, the entire crisis has been orchestrated to flush out specific targets. You backtrack quickly, following Chen Wei-mei through passages that grow narrower and more treacherous. Water seeps through cracks in the ancient stonework, creating pools that reflect your lamp's flickering light in disturbing patterns. The temperature drops noticeably as you move deeper underground, away from the warmth of human habitation into spaces that haven't seen regular use in decades. There's an old exit near the docks, Chen Wei-mei explains, as you navigate around a partially collapsed section. It leads to warehouses that were abandoned after the flooding 3 years ago. Not safe, but probably not watched. The abandoned warehouses represent another gamble in a night already filled with desperate chances. The dock district floods regularly during seasonal storms, leaving buildings damaged and uninhabitable, but providing excellent cover for activities that require privacy from official oversight. Criminal organizations use such spaces for meetings and storage, making them potentially more dangerous than the tunnels you're fleeing. But as the sound of systematic searching grows closer, alternatives become increasingly limited. The security forces have resources and coordination that suggest backing from organizations far more powerful than a single murdered industrialist could command. You're not just fleeing von Kellermann's associates, you're running from a network that includes government officials, international intelligence services, and criminal syndicates working together toward goals you can't begin to comprehend. The tunnel begins to ascend again, and the sound of running water grows stronger. River proximity means you're approaching the Huangpu, where Shanghai's legitimate commerce mixes with activities that exist in legal grey areas, or beyond law entirely. The docks never sleep, providing constant cover for movement and transactions that couldn't survive daylight scrutiny. Chen Wei stops at what appears to be a solid wall, but her hands find hidden mechanisms that reveal another passage, this one clearly more recent construction. Modern tools have carved through ancient stone, creating a route that connects the old tunnel system to contemporary Shanghai's hidden infrastructure, Smuggler's Highway, she explains. Built to move goods between the river and the foreign settlements without customs inspection. If we can reach the main branch, we can access any building in the commercial district. Wow. The newer passage shows signs of regular use. Worn stone where countless feet have passed, oil stains from lamps, even crude benches where people waited during busy periods. This is active criminal infrastructure, maintained and protected by organizations that profit from Shanghai's complex legal environment. But activity also means danger. The tunnels serve multiple criminal enterprises, and territorial disputes are resolved through violence rather than negotiation. 2 women carrying stolen documents would represent either valuable assets or dangerous competitors, depending on which organization controlled the territory you're entering. A distant explosion shakes dust from the ceiling, followed by shouting that echoes through the stone corridors. The search above ground has escalated into something approaching urban warfare, suggesting that multiple factions are now involved in recovering von Kellermann's missing materials. Faster, Chen Wei urges, breaking into a run despite the treacherous footing. If they're using explosives, nowhere in the quarter is safe. You follow her through passages that seem to stretch forever, your simple cotton dress catching on rough stone protrusions, while your inadequate shoes slip on surfaces made treacherous by decades of moisture and use. The document against your ribs feels heavier with each step, as if the weight of its secrets is increasing as more people die trying to recover it. The tunnel opens suddenly into a vast underground chamber that takes your breath away. Carved from solid rock, it's large enough to hold several buildings, with multiple levels connected by stone staircases and wooden walkways. Oil lamps and candles provide pools of light that reveal the space's current use as a storage and distribution center for goods that can't bear official scrutiny. Crates and barrels line the walls, marked with symbols that identify their contents to those who understand the codes. Opium from the interior provinces, manufactured goods from European factories, weapons from American suppliers, and stranger items that suggest markets you can't imagine. This is the beating heart of Shanghai's shadow economy, where fortunes are made and lost beyond the reach of any government's taxation or regulation. But the chamber isn't empty of human presence. Figures move through the shadows between storage areas, conducting business that requires privacy and security that legal venues cannot provide. Guards with weapons patrol the walkways, their alertness suggesting awareness that tonight's chaos above ground could affect their operations below Chen Wei. Mei grabs your arm, pulling you into the shadows behind a stack of tea chests that provides concealment while you assess the situation. The chamber's inhabitants haven't noticed your arrival yet, but crossing the space to reach the exit passages will require passing through areas under active observation. Who are they? You whisper, watching armed figures move with military precision between storage areas. Green Gang, she replies, naming one of Shanghai's most powerful criminal organizations. They control most smuggling through this district. If they're here in force, something major is happening. The Green Gang's involvement adds another layer of complexity to your situation. They're not just criminals. They're a shadow government that maintains order in Shanghai's underworld through a combination of violence, corruption, and genuine community service in areas where official authority fails to function effectively. Their interest in tonight's events suggests connections that extend far beyond simple drug trafficking. A commotion near one of the chamber's main entrances draws everyone's attention. New arrivals are entering the space, their voices carrying the urgency of people bringing important news. You strain to hear their conversation, catching fragments that make your blood freeze. "Foreign devils everywhere above," one voice reports in Shanghai dialect. "Military, police, private security. They're tearing apart every building in 3 districts." "What are they looking for?" demands another voice, this one carrying the authority of leadership. Papers taken from the German's office, something about drug shipments, government agreements, money flowing to officials in Beijing and London. The conversation confirms your worst fears. The document you carry isn't just evidence of criminal activity, it's proof of corruption that reaches into the highest levels of multiple governments. No wonder the response has been so overwhelming and coordinated. You're carrying information that could destabilize the entire political and economic structure that keeps Shanghai functioning. Chen Weimei's grip on your arm tightens as more details emerge from the conversation across the chamber. The search above ground involves not just German security forces, but also British military units, Chinese government agents, and what sounds like representatives from several other foreign powers. Your theft has triggered an international incident that threatens to expose corruption networks spanning continents. "We need to leave," she whispers urgently. "If the Green Gang realizes what we're carrying, they'll either sell us to the highest bidder or eliminate us to prevent complications with their own operations." But crossing the chamber requires passing through areas where concealment becomes impossible. The walkways and staircases that connect different levels are well lit and constantly patrolled, making undetected movement virtually impossible for anyone not authorized to be in the space. The sound of approaching footsteps from the tunnel entrance behind you eliminates the option of retreat. Multiple sets of boots echo through the stone corridors, moving with the systematic rhythm of organized search teams. The security forces have found the tunnel entrances and are conducting methodical sweeps that will reach your position within minutes. You're trapped between criminal organizations that would exploit you and security forces that would eliminate you, carrying information that makes you valuable enough to fight over and dangerous enough to kill. The chamber that had seemed like potential salvation has become another trap, with exits controlled by people whose interests may not align with your survival. Chen Weimei studies the chamber's layout with desperate intensity, looking for options that don't require trusting organizations known for solving problems through violence. Her knowledge of Shanghai's underground geography has kept you alive this far, but even her expertise has limits when facing coordinated opposition from multiple directions. There, she points toward a section of the chamber where water damage has created gaps in the stone walls. Flood channels that drain into the river during high water, dangerous, but probably unwatched. The flood channels represent another gamble with potentially fatal consequences. Shanghai's drainage system was never designed to handle the city's rapid growth, and the passages that carry stormwater to the river are notorious for trapping people during weather events. But they also provide routes that bypass the controlled entrances and exits that criminal organizations monitor. The sound of boots in the tunnel behind you grows closer, accompanied by voices speaking in multiple languages that suggest international cooperation in the search time has run out for careful consideration of alternatives. You must choose between known dangers and unknown risks, between the certainty of capture if you remain and the possibility of survival if you dare. The flood channel's Chen Weimei moves first, slipping through shadows toward the damaged section of wall where water stains mark the entrance to the drainage system. You follow, clutching the document that has transformed you from escaped courtesan to international fugitive, carrying secrets that powerful people will kill to protect. The flood channel entrance is barely large enough for a person to squeeze through, and the smell of stagnant water and decay that emerges from the opening suggests conditions that will test your endurance and resolve. But behind you, the sounds of systematic searching grow ever closer, while ahead lies the unknown darkness of Shanghai's hidden arteries. As you slip through the gap into the flood channel, you hear explosions echoing from multiple directions above ground. The search for von Kellermann's missing documents has escalated into something approaching urban warfare, with different factions using increasingly violent methods to secure what they believe you possess. The channel beyond is narrow and filled with water that rises above your ankles, forcing you to move in single file through darkness broken only by occasional shafts of light from storm drains above. The water is cold and carries debris that makes each step treacherous, while the curved walls amplify every sound, until your breathing seems loud enough to alert every searcher in Shanghai. But you're moving toward the river, toward possibilities that don't involve surrendering to organizations that view human life as expendable. The document against your ribs has already cost lives and triggered international incidents, but it also represents the first real choice you've had since waking in that opium-scented room hours ago. Chen Wei-mei navigates the flood channel with confidence born of necessity, following routes she's clearly used before during other emergencies. Her knowledge of Shanghai's hidden geography continues to prove invaluable, providing alternatives to the controlled spaces where criminal organizations and security forces expect to find their quarry. The channel begins to slope more steeply as it approaches the river, and the sound of running water grows stronger. Storm drains and sewage outlets create a complex network of passages that connect every district of the city to the Huangpu, providing access routes that bypass all official checkpoints and commercial controls. But proximity to the river also brings new dangers. The dock districts operate under different rules than the foreign settlements, with territorial disputes resolved through violence and competition eliminated through methods that leave no witnesses. The organizations that control river access are older and more ruthless than the criminal enterprises you've encountered so far. A shaft of light ahead marks another storm drain opening, this one large enough to climb through if you can reach it. The opening provides access to street level, but also represents exposure to whatever forces are conducting the search above ground. Every choice continues to balance immediate risks against unknown consequences, with survival depending on correctly guessing which dangers are manageable and which are fatal. Chen Wei-mei pauses at the base of the storm drain, listening carefully for sounds that would indicate activity in the street above. The explosions have stopped, replaced by the systematic sounds of organized searching that suggest one faction has established temporary control over the area. But which faction, and whether their control represents safety or additional danger, remains unclear. "Quickly," she whispers, beginning to climb toward the opening above. The tide is turning, and these channels flood when the river rises. The climb through the storm drain requires careful navigation around metal grates and debris that could slice through clothing or flesh. Your simple cotton dress provides little protection against the sharp edges, while your inadequate shoes make each foothold precarious. But the alternative, remaining in channels that will fill with water, makes the risks acceptable. You emerge into a Shanghai dawn that bears little resemblance to the city you'd known as a courtesan. Smoke rises from multiple locations throughout the foreign quarter, while military vehicles patrol streets that are normally filled with commercial traffic. The systematic search for von Kellermann's documents has transformed the international settlement into something approaching martial law. The document against your ribs feels heavier than ever as you survey the devastation your theft has triggered. Buildings show signs of forced entry, while bodies covered with sheets suggest that resistance to the searches has been met with lethal force. You're carrying information that has already cost dozens of lives, but also possessing the only leverage you have for negotiating survival in a city gone mad. Chen Wei-mei surveys the scene with grim understanding. The entire balance of power has shifted, she observes. Whatever that document contains, it's worth more than money to these people. The dawn light reveals details that had been hidden by darkness and rain. Foreign military units patrol alongside Chinese officials, suggesting cooperation between governments that are normally rivals. Private security forces bearing different corporate insignia work together with coordination that indicates prearranged agreements. The search for von Kellermann's documents has united interests that are usually competitive or hostile. But unity among your enemies also creates opportunities for those clever enough to exploit the cracks in temporary alliances. Different organizations have different priorities, and what appears to be cooperation could quickly dissolve into competition if the stakes change or new information emerges. The document you carry might be the key to playing these factions against each other rather than simply fleeing from all of them. A patrol approaches your position, forcing you to take cover behind abandoned market stalls that line the street. The soldiers wear mixed uniforms that suggest units drawn from multiple foreign powers, working under temporary command structures created specifically for tonight's operation. Their discipline and coordination indicate professional military training, not the casual brutality of criminal enforcers. As they pass, you catch fragments of conversation that confirm your suspicions about the document's significance. References to Beijing connections, London banking records, and American pharmaceutical partnerships suggest corruption networks that span continents and involve the highest levels of international commerce and government. The patrol moves on, continuing their systematic search of every building and potential hiding place. But their passage has revealed something that makes your heart race with possibility rather than fear. One of the soldiers carried dispatch cases bearing diplomatic seals, suggesting that official communications are being used to coordinate the search operation. "Did you see the diplomatic pouches?" Chen Weimei asks, her voice carrying the same excitement you feel. "Multiple governments working together," you confirm, "which means multiple competing interests that we might be able to exploit." The realization transforms your understanding of the situation. You're not just carrying evidence of criminal activity, you're possessing proof of international corruption threatens legitimate governments as well as criminal organizations. Different countries have different reasons for wanting the information suppressed or revealed, creating opportunities for negotiation rather than simple flight. But exploiting such opportunities requires understanding exactly what the document contains and which revelations would be most valuable to which parties. The Dawnlight provides your first real opportunity to examine the papers carefully, to decode the secrets that have turned you from escaped Courtesan into international fugitive Chen Weimei finds a sheltered doorway where you can examine the document without exposure to passing trolls. The morning sun illuminates details that had been impossible to read by lamplight, revealing information that explains the massive response your theft has triggered. The papers contain more than just shipping manifests and drug distribution networks. They document financial transfers between European pharmaceutical companies and Chinese officials, detailing corruption that reaches into the imperial court itself. American banking records show money laundering operations that fund both legitimate businesses and criminal enterprises throughout Asia. British military reports describe cooperation with drug smugglers in exchange for intelligence about anti-colonial activities. This isn't just about drugs. Chen Weimei breathes as the scope of the corruption becomes clear. This is about the entire system that keeps the foreign settlements functioning. The document reveals that Shanghai's apparent chaos is actually carefully managed, with criminal organizations serving as unofficial extensions of various governments' intelligence and economic interests. The drug trade provides funding for operations that can't be supported through official channels, while corruption ensures that Chinese officials cooperate with foreign business interests that benefit their home countries. Your theft hasn't just disrupted criminal activity, it's threatened to expose the shadow agreements that allow multiple foreign powers to exploit Chinese resources while maintaining the fiction of legitimate commerce and diplomatic relations. No wonder the response has been so overwhelming and coordinated. You're carrying evidence that could destroy the entire colonial system in China. But such valuable information also provides unprecedented leverage for someone clever enough to use it properly. Different governments would pay enormous sums to obtain evidence of their rivals' corruption, while also paying equally large amounts to prevent their own activities from being exposed. The document makes you potentially valuable to everyone and threatening to everyone simultaneously. The sound of approaching aircraft adds a new dimension to the morning's chaos. Military planes circle overhead, their presence indicating that the search operation has expanded beyond ground forces to include aerial surveillance and potentially airstrikes if the situation escalates further. The stakes have risen beyond anything you could have imagined when you first took those papers from Harrison's room. Chen Wei-mei grabs your arm as she spots movement in the distance and makes her face go pale. "Foreign warships," she says, pointing toward the river where naval vessels are taking positions that would allow them to control all traffic in and out of Shanghai's harbour. The implications are staggering. Multiple foreign navies have coordinated to blockade Shanghai, preventing anyone from leaving the city with information that could compromise their interests. You're not just trapped in a building or district, you're imprisoned in an entire city that has been sealed by international military force. But warships also mean that whatever you're carrying is valuable enough to justify risking war between major powers. The document has become more than evidence of corruption. It's a strategic asset that could shift the balance of power throughout Asia if it falls into the wrong hands. The morning sun climbs higher, revealing a Shanghai transformed by a single night's chaos into something resembling a war zone. The city where you had lived as a courtesan, trapped by debt and dependency, has become a prison where escape requires navigating international conspiracies and military operations that span continents. But you're no longer the powerless woman who had awakened in that opium-scented room. You carry secrets that governments and criminal organizations will kill to obtain or suppress, information that makes you one of the most important people in Shanghai, despite your humble origins and recent circumstances. The document against your ribs pulses with possibilities that extend far beyond personal freedom to encompass the future of international relations in Asia. Every choice you make from this moment forward will influence not just your own survival, but the balance of power between empires that see China as territory to be exploited rather than a nation to be respected. Chen Wei-mei looks to you for guidance, her trust both touching and terrifying, given the magnitude of the decisions now required. The sun continues rising over a city in chaos, while in the distance, warships and aircraft ensure that whatever resolution emerges from this crisis will be determined by those bold enough to seize control of information that could reshape the world. The teenage Courtesan, who had once depended on others for every aspect of survival, now holds the power to influence the fate of nations. The opium dreams that had once provided escape from powerless reality have been replaced by waking possibilities that are both more dangerous and more liberating than anything the smoke could have provided. Your story is no longer being written by others who see you as property to be bought and sold. You hold the pen now, and the next chapters will be determined by choices that only you can make in a world transformed by secrets that only you possess. The morning air carries the acrid smell of gunpowder and burning wood as you and Chen Wei-mei navigate through Shanghai's transformed streets. Each block reveals new evidence of the night's violence: overturned carriages, shattered windows, and the occasional dark stain on cobblestones that speaks of encounters between searchers and those who resisted too strongly. The document sewn into your dress lining feels like it's radiating heat, a constant reminder of the power you now carry. But power without a plan is merely danger, and as the sun climbs higher, you realize that survival requires more than just avoiding capture. You need to understand the game being played around you and find a way to emerge as a player rather than merely a prize. Chen Wei-mei guides you through a maze of side streets toward what she calls the neutral zone, a district where competing foreign interests have created an unofficial buffer area where violence is discouraged by mutual agreement. It's not safety exactly, but it's a place where negotiations might be possible without immediate threat of assassination. The buildings here show a different architectural character, mixing Chinese traditional elements with European commercial designs in ways that create something entirely new. This is where Shanghai's transformation is most visible, where East meets West, not in the exploitative relationships of the settlements, but in genuine collaboration between merchants and artisans who profit from cultural exchange. A tea house occupies the ground floor of a building that combines German engineering with Chinese aesthetics. Its wide windows allowing observation of the street, while multiple exits provide escape routes if negotiations turn dangerous. The proprietor, an elderly Chinese man with European clothes and traditional queue, nods recognition to Chen Wei-mei with the familiarity of someone who has provided sanctuary before upstairs room. He says simply in Mandarin, gesturing toward a staircase that leads to private dining areas. No questions, no names, no problems unless you bring them. The room he provides overlooks the street through latticed windows that allow you to observe without being seen. A low table holds tea service and simple food, while cushions arranged around the space provide comfortable seating for conversations that might continue for hours. Most importantly, the room has 3 different exits, including one that connects to the neighboring building through a shared wall. As you settle into this temporary refuge, the scope of your situation becomes clearer. The document you carry contains information that threatens not just individual criminals or corrupt officials, but the entire system of international relationships that defines modern Shanghai. The pharmaceutical networks, banking arrangements, and political agreements detailed in von Kellermann's papers reveal how foreign powers maintain control over Chinese territory through methods that would scandalize their home populations if exposed. But exposure would also destroy the economic relationships that benefit everyone involved, including the Chinese officials who profit from cooperation and the foreign businesses that employ thousands of local workers. The corruption documented in your papers isn't just theft. It's the foundation of a complex system that has brought prosperity to Shanghai, even while exploiting Chinese sovereignty. Chen Wei-mei studies your face as these realizations sink in. You're beginning to understand why so many people want that document, she observes. It's not just evidence of crimes, it's proof of how the entire city actually operates. The tea house proprietor brings fresh supplies, clean clothes that will make you less conspicuous, basic medical supplies for treating the cuts and bruises accumulated during your underground escape, and most importantly, writing materials that will allow you to create copies of the crucial document. Multiple copies mean you can negotiate with different parties simultaneously, playing them against each other, rather than simply selling to the highest bidder. As you work to transcribe the most important sections of von Kellermann's papers, the complexity of your position becomes even more apparent. The information could be used to destroy foreign influence in Shanghai, but it could also be used to strengthen that influence by eliminating competitors and consolidating control. Different portions of the document would be valuable to different parties for completely opposite reasons. The British sections detail cooperation with American businesses that violate trade agreements with London. American intelligence services would pay handsomely for evidence that could embarrass their British counterparts, while British authorities would pay equally well to suppress such information. The Chinese portions reveal which officials have been compromised, information that reform-minded elements in Beijing would find invaluable, but that corrupt officials would kill to suppress. Chen Wei-mei helps organize the copied materials, her quick intelligence grasping the strategic possibilities as quickly as you do. We could sell different pieces to different buyers, she suggests, play each faction's interests against the others while keeping the complete picture for ourselves as insurance. The strategy has merit, but it also requires sophisticated understanding of international politics and criminal networks that extends far beyond your experience as courtesans. Misjudging any party's priorities or capabilities could result in betrayal, elimination, or worse, being caught between competing factions when their temporary cooperation dissolves into open conflict. A commotion in the street below interrupts your planning. Through the latticed windows, you can see a convoy of vehicles approaching the tea house, their occupants wearing the mixed uniforms that have become familiar throughout the morning. But these aren't search teams conducting random sweeps. They're moving with the purposeful direction of people who know exactly where they're going. The tea house proprietor appears in your doorway, his usual calm demeanor replaced by obvious concern. "Someone has provided information about your location," he says quietly. "You have perhaps 5 minutes before they surround the building." Chen Wei-mei immediately begins gathering the copied documents while you secure the original papers in your dress lining. The morning's work has provided you with negotiating materials, but only if you survive long enough to use them. The neutral zone's protection extends only as far as the mutual interests that created it, and those interests apparently don't include harboring fugitives wanted by multiple international powers. The 3 exit routes from your room suddenly become crucial as you evaluate options for escape. The main staircase leads directly into the path of the approaching forces. The connection to the neighboring building might provide temporary concealment, but it could also lead into a trap if the search teams have surrounded multiple structures. The third option, a window that opens onto the building's roof, offers the possibility of escape across Shanghai's interconnected rooftops, but also the certainty of exposure to aerial surveillance that has been tracking movement throughout the city. The roofs, Chen Wei-mei decides, already moving toward the window. Better to be seen and moving than trapped and captured. You follow her onto a narrow ledge that runs along the building's exterior, the morning sun making the wet tiles treacherous while the sounds of systematic searching echo from the street below. Shanghai's traditional architecture creates a landscape of connected rooftops that stretches across entire districts, providing highways for those agile enough to navigate them and desperate enough to accept the risks. The view from the rooftops reveals the true scope of the morning's chaos. Smoke rises from dozens of locations throughout the foreign quarter, while military vehicles patrol every major street in patterns that suggest coordination between forces that are normally competitive. The search for von Kellermann's documents has temporarily united interests that span continents, creating a level of international cooperation that would be impressive if it weren't focused on your capture or elimination. But the rooftop perspective also reveals opportunities that weren't visible from street level. Shanghai's complex geography creates blind spots where aerial surveillance becomes difficult, while the maze of traditional buildings provides concealment from ground-based searches. Most importantly, the rooftops connect districts that are controlled by different organizations, offering possibilities for reaching areas where the current search coordination might not extend. Chen Wei-mei leads you across a series of connected buildings toward what she identifies as the Old Chinese City, where traditional authority structures maintain influence despite foreign domination of the coastal areas. The transition is visible in the architecture. European commercial building giving way to Chinese residential structures that have sheltered families for generations. The pursuit behind you becomes audible as search teams reach the tea house and discover your recent presence. Voices in multiple languages coordinate efforts to track your movement across the rooftops, while the sound of aircraft overhead suggests that aerial assets are being repositioned to maintain visual contact. The temporary sanctuary of the neutral zone has been compromised, forcing you back into active flight through territory where every step could be your last. The rooftop journey requires constant attention to footing on surfaces that were never designed for human traffic. Traditional Chinese tiles shift under your weight, while gaps between buildings demand careful jumps that could prove fatal if misjudged. Your simple cotton dress provides better mobility than silk robes would have, but the fabric catches on protruding elements that threaten to tear or trap you at crucial moments. As you navigate across the urban landscape, fragments of the morning's conversations drift up from the streets below. Multiple languages blend together as search teams coordinate their efforts, but you also hear voices speaking in dialects that suggest local Shanghai residents are being questioned about your possible whereabouts. The search has expanded beyond military and police personnel to include civilian informants whose knowledge of the city's hidden geography could prove decisive in tracking your movements. The boundary between the foreign settlements and the old Chinese city becomes apparent as the building styles and street layouts change beneath you. Traditional courtyard houses replace European commercial structures, while narrow alleys designed for foot traffic and handcarts contrast sharply with the wide boulevards built to accommodate foreign carriages and military vehicles. But the transition also brings new dangers. The old city operates under different rules than the international settlements, with authority exercised through traditional hierarchies that have learned to coexist with but remain separate from foreign control. Your appearance and obvious flight from foreign pursuit could mark you as either refugees seeking sanctuary or criminals bringing unwanted attention to communities that prefer to avoid involvement in international conflicts. Chen Weimei pauses at the edge of a building that overlooks a traditional Chinese market, its morning activities providing cover for movement at street level, but also creating crowds where concealment becomes both easier and more dangerous. The market operates according to rhythms that predate Shanghai's foreign settlements, with vendors and customers conducting business through relationships built over generations, rather than the impersonal commerce that characterizes the international districts. "We need to get down to street level," she explains. "The rooftops are too exposed now that they know our general direction, but moving through the market means blending in with people who might recognize us as outsiders. The descent requires using drainage pipes and architectural features that provide handholds and footing for a climb that would be challenging under the best circumstances. Your inadequate shoes make every step precarious, while the morning sun has begun to heat the metal surfaces enough to make prolonged contact uncomfortable. But the alternative, remaining on rooftops that offer no concealment from aerial observation, makes the risks acceptable. The market streets envelope you in sensory experiences that contrast sharply with the refined atmosphere of the flower houses or the clinical efficiency of the international settlements. Vendors call out in Shanghai dialect, advertising vegetables, fish, and manufactured goods that serve the daily needs of families whose lives revolve around traditional Chinese customs rather than foreign influence. The smells of cooking food, incense from nearby temples, and the accumulated odors of urban life create an atmosphere that feels authentically Chinese in ways that the international districts never achieved. But authenticity also means suspicion of outsiders, especially women whose appearance and behavior suggest association with the foreign settlements. Your simple cotton dress helps you blend in better than silk robes would have, but your bearing and the way you move through the crowd still mark you as someone accustomed to different social environments. The scrutiny you receive from market vendors and customers ranges from curious to suspicious, creating potential security risks if anyone decides to investigate your presence more thoroughly. Chen Weimei guides you through the market with confidence that suggests familiarity with this environment. Her knowledge of Shanghai's geography extending beyond the entertainment districts to include the traditional Chinese areas that many courtesans never see. Her ability to navigate different social environments has proven invaluable throughout your escape, demonstrating skills that extend far beyond what her position at the flower house would have required. The market's layout provides natural concealment through the maze of temporary stalls and permanent shops that create visual barriers while allowing rapid movement in multiple directions. But the same complexity that offers protection also creates opportunities for ambush if your pursuers have anticipated your route, or if local residents decide that cooperation with foreign authorities serves their interests better than protecting fugitive strangers. A commotion near the market's main entrance suggests that search teams have extended their operations into the traditional Chinese districts, creating new pressure for rapid movement toward whatever sanctuary might exist in areas even further from foreign control. The temporary safety of blending into market crowds has already been compromised by the systematic nature of the pursuit and the resources being deployed to recover von Kellermann's documents. The documents themselves continue to feel like they're burning against your ribs, their weight seeming to increase as the scope of their significance becomes clearer. You're carrying information that could reshape international relationships throughout Asia, evidence of corruption that reaches into the highest levels of multiple governments, and proof of criminal activities that generate fortunes large enough to fund private armies and international operations. But you're also carrying the key to your own liberation from the debt and dependency that had defined your existence as a courtesan. The information that makes you valuable to governments and criminal organizations also provides leverage for negotiating freedom and security that no amount of money could purchase through conventional means. The question is whether you can survive long enough to use that leverage effectively. Chen Wei-mei spots an opportunity for concealment in a traditional Chinese temple that occupies a central position in the market district. The temple's multiple buildings and courtyards provide numerous hiding places. While religious sanctuary traditions might offer protection from pursuit, even if they don't guarantee long-term safety, most importantly, temples maintain connections to traditional Chinese authority structures that operate independently of foreign control. The temple's main hall houses a statue of Guanyin, the Buddhist goddess of mercy, surrounded by offerings from local residents seeking protection, prosperity, and relief from suffering. The irony isn't lost on you. Seeking sanctuary before a deity associated with compassion and liberation, while carrying documents that reveal systematic exploitation and corruption affecting millions of people throughout China. But temples also serve as community centers where information flows through networks that predate and parallel foreign intelligence operations. The monks and local officials who manage temple affairs maintain awareness of political developments that could affect their communities, making them potentially valuable sources of information about current events and future possibilities. An elderly monk approaches as you enter the temple grounds, his robes and bearing marking him as someone with authority within the religious hierarchy. His eyes assess your appearance and obvious distress with the practiced evaluation of someone accustomed to providing sanctuary for people fleeing various forms of persecution or misfortune. Benefactors seek refuge from the morning's troubles, he observes in cultured Mandarin, his tone neutral but not unwelcoming. The temple provides sanctuary for those whose hearts are pure, but wisdom suggests that sanctuary extended to some may bring danger to many. The statement contains both offer and warning, acknowledging that religious tradition requires providing aid to those in need, while also recognizing that your presence could attract violence that would endanger other temple residents and visitors. Your response will determine whether the sanctuary is extended or whether you're politely but firmly directed to seek assistance elsewhere. Chen Wei-mei steps forward to address the monk directly, her understanding of religious protocol apparently extending beyond your own knowledge of such matters. Honored teacher, we seek not permanent refuge, but temporary respite, while considering paths that lead away from trouble rather than toward it. The monk nods approvingly at her diplomatic phrasing, which acknowledges the temple's concerns while requesting only limited assistance. Such wisdom suggests understanding of consequences that extend beyond immediate circumstances. Follow me. He leads you through courtyards and halls that demonstrate the temple's age and the devotion of generations of worshippers who have maintained and expanded the complex over centuries. The architecture combines religious symbolism with practical considerations, creating spaces that serve spiritual needs while also providing meeting areas where community business can be conducted away from foreign observation. The room he provides overlooks one of the temple's inner courtyards, offering privacy while maintaining visual connection to the complex's daily activities. Buddhist scriptures line the walls, while simple furnishings provide basic comfort without ostentation. Most importantly, multiple exits allow rapid departure if circumstances require immediate flight. As you settle into this new temporary refuge, the monk brings tea and simple food, while also providing something more valuable: information about the morning's events and their implications for everyone in Shanghai. His knowledge comes from networks that extend throughout the traditional Chinese community, sources that observe foreign activities while remaining largely invisible to foreign intelligence operations. The German's death has created opportunities that many seek to exploit, he explains quietly. But the papers you carry threaten stability that benefits all communities, Chinese and foreign alike. Those who would use such information for personal gain risk destroying arrangements that have brought prosperity to millions. His words carry the weight of someone who has observed Shanghai's transformation over decades, witnessing how foreign influence has brought both exploitation and economic development that has improved living conditions for many residents. The corruption documented in von Kellermann's papers may be morally objectionable, but it's also part of a system that has created jobs, infrastructure, and opportunities that didn't exist before foreign involvement. The complexity of your moral position becomes increasingly apparent as you consider these perspectives. Using the documents to expose corruption might serve justice, but it would also destroy economic relationships that support thousands of families throughout Shanghai. Suppressing the information might enable continued exploitation, but it would also preserve stability that benefits communities that have little involvement in the criminal activities. The paper's document Chen Wei-mei voices the question that has been growing in your mind throughout the morning's revelations. Is there a path that serves justice without destroying innocent people's livelihoods? The monk considers her question with the thoughtful attention that religious training brings to ethical dilemmas. Wisdom lies not in absolute positions, but in understanding that different truths serve different needs. The papers you carry could be used to reform rather than destroy, to improve rather than eliminate the relationships they document. Shiti, his suggestion opens possibilities you hadn't previously considered. Rather than selling the information to the highest bidder or using it to destroy your enemies, you might be able to use it as leverage for systemic reforms that reduce exploitation while preserving beneficial economic relationships. Such an approach would require sophisticated negotiation with multiple parties, but it might also create outcomes that serve broader interests rather than just your personal survival. The sound of activity in the streets beyond the temple walls reminds you that time remains limited for philosophical discussions about optimal outcomes. The search for von Kellermann's documents continues with resources that suggest determination to recover the information, regardless of costs in lives or international stability. Your presence in the temple puts the religious community at risk, while providing only temporary concealment from pursuit that shows no signs diminishing. But the monk's perspective has introduced new possibilities for resolving your situation through negotiation rather than continued flight. If the documents can be used to improve rather than destroy existing systems, they might provide foundation for agreements that serve everyone's interests, while also ensuring your personal freedom and security. The temple bells begin ringing to mark the late morning hour, their bronze voices carrying across Shanghai's rooftops with sounds that have measured time in this place for centuries, before foreign ships brought the changes that have transformed the city into its current complex form. The bells remind you that some things endure despite political upheavals and criminal conspiracies, that human needs for community, security, and meaning remain constant, even when the systems that serve those needs undergo dramatic transformation. Your story began in opium-scented rooms where dreams provided escape from powerless reality. Now you carry documents that could reshape the dreams of entire nations, information that makes you one of the most important people in a city built on the intersection of competing empires and conflicting ambitions. The morning sun climbs toward its zenith over a Shanghai transformed by a single night's chaos, while in the distance, warships ensure that whatever resolution emerges will be determined by those bold enough to seize control of information that could change the course of history. The teenage courtesan who once depended on others for survival now holds secrets that governments will kill to obtain or suppress. But power without wisdom is merely danger, and wisdom without courage is merely philosophy. The documents against your ribs pulse with possibilities that extend far beyond personal liberation to encompass questions about how societies should balance prosperity with justice, how individuals can challenge systems without destroying the communities those systems serve, and how ordinary people can influence the course of history when circumstances thrust extraordinary choices upon them. The temple provides sanctuary for now, but sanctuary is temporary. Soon you must decide whether to flee with your secrets, sell them for personal gain, or use them to create changes that serve broader purposes than immediate survival. The choice will determine not just your own fate, but the future of relationships between East and West. In a world where the collision of different civilizations continues to create both opportunities and tragedies on an unprecedented scale, the opium dreams that once offered escape from reality have been replaced by waking possibilities that are both more dangerous and more liberating than anything the smoke could have provided. Your pen now writes the story, and the next chapters depend entirely on choices that only you can make in a world transformed by secrets that only you possess. The temple's afternoon shadows grow longer as you realize that sanctuary, however temporary, provides the first opportunity to truly examine the full scope of what you've stolen. The monk brings rice paper and ink, understanding without explanation that transcription might be necessary for whatever negotiations lie ahead. As you spread von Kellermann's documents across the low table, the afternoon light reveals details that lamplight and urgency had previously obscured. The pharmaceutical shipping manifests contain more than just drug quantities and destinations. They list specific chemical formulations that don't match any legitimate medical compounds you've heard discussed among the flower house clientele who often spoke of their various remedies and treatments. Chen Wei-mei peers over your shoulder as you trace your finger along columns of numbers that seem to follow patterns more complex than simple commercial transactions. These aren't just purchase orders, she observes. Look at the timing. Every shipment coordinates with specific dates when government officials travel between cities. The correlation becomes impossible to ignore once she points it out. Chemical deliveries arrive in Hong Kong exactly when British colonial administrators visit from London. American pharmaceutical shipments reach Manila precisely during congressional fact-finding missions. German compounds enter Shanghai during diplomatic conferences between European powers and Chinese imperial representatives. They're not just bribing officials, you breathe, understanding flooding through you like cold water. They're dosing them. These chemicals aren't recreational drugs. They're compounds designed to influence judgment, memory, even basic reasoning. The implications stagger you as the true scope of the conspiracy becomes apparent. The corruption documented in these papers isn't just financial. It's pharmaceutical manipulation of government officials whose decisions affect millions of lives throughout Asia trade agreements, territorial concessions, military cooperation arrangements, all potentially influenced by chemical compounds administered without the knowledge of the officials signing documents that reshape international relationships. Chen Wei-mei's face goes pale as she traces similar patterns in other sections of the documents. The flower houses, she whispers. The special clients who receive private audiences with specific girls known for their discretion. The unusual requests for particular types of tea service, specific incense, custom-prepared opium blends. Your blood freezes as her words connect dots you hadn't wanted to see. The House of Golden Butterflies hadn't just been an entertainment establishment. It had been a laboratory where foreign officials were exposed to chemical influences during moments of physical and emotional vulnerability. The elaborate tea ceremonies, the carefully prepared opium, the incense that seemed unusually potent. All of it had been cover for pharmaceutical manipulation designed to make powerful men more susceptible to suggestion and less capable of critical analysis. The document reveals that Mother Chen hadn't just been managing courtesans. She'd been administering a systematic program of chemical influence that targeted specific officials whose decisions could benefit particular business interests. The girls hadn't just been entertainers. They'd been unwitting participants in espionage operations that used intimate relationships to facilitate pharmaceutical manipulation of men, whose choices affected international commerce and political relationships. How many of us were involved without knowing? Chen Wei-mei asks. her voice carrying the horror of someone realizing she'd been used for purposes far more sinister than simple sexual entertainment. The papers suggest the program extended throughout Shanghai's entertainment districts, with different establishments targeting officials from different countries and interests. British officials frequented houses that specialized in compounds designed to increase their receptivity to German business proposals. American businessmen were directed toward establishments that used chemicals favoring French commercial interests. Chinese officials were entertained at locations where pharmaceutical manipulations supported whatever foreign power had paid for access during specific negotiation periods. The systematic nature of the operation reveals planning and coordination that extends far beyond criminal enterprise into something approaching chemical warfare conducted through commercial and diplomatic channels. Von Kellerman hadn't just been manufacturing drugs for recreational use. He'd been producing compounds specifically designed to influence decision-making processes of government officials, whose choices determined the fate of entire populations. A commotion in the temple courtyard interrupts your analysis as visitors arrive, whose purposeful movement and official bearing suggest connection to the morning's search operations. Through the latticed windows, you can see men in civilian clothes who carry themselves with the disciplined posture of military or intelligence personnel conducting systematic inquiries. The elderly monk appears in your doorway, his expression grave but not panicked. Representatives from various interested parties request audience with the temple's recent visitors, he says carefully. Not search teams, but negotiators who claim authority to discuss resolution of current difficulties. The moment you've been anticipating has arrived sooner than expected. Someone has decided that direct negotiation serves their interests better than continued pursuit through Shanghai's maze of traditional buildings and foreign settlements. But negotiation requires determining which party has sent these representatives and what terms they might be prepared to offer for information that has already triggered international incidents. Multiple parties? Chen Wei-mei asks, recognizing the significance of the monk's careful phrasing. British, American, German and Chinese representatives, he confirms, each claiming exclusive authority to resolve matters peacefully, each warning that other parties' involvement would complicate situations unnecessarily. The competing claims reveal the complexity of interests affected by your theft. Different governments want different portions of the information suppressed or revealed, while each believes their approach serves both their national interests and broader stability. But their simultaneous arrival suggests coordination that might indicate shared understanding of the document's contents and implications. You gather the papers quickly, securing the originals in your dress lining while organizing the copies you've made into separate packets that could be used for different negotiating purposes. Each government represented below would find different sections most valuable, creating opportunities to play competing interests against each other while maintaining leverage through possession of complete information. The temple's architecture provides multiple meeting spaces where different conversations could occur simultaneously, allowing you to assess various offers without committing to exclusive negotiations with any single party. But such tactics also risk creating conflicts between representatives who might prefer cooperation to competition when dealing with individuals they consider criminals rather than legitimate negotiating partners. Chen Wei-mei checks the room's multiple exits while you consider approaches to negotiations that could determine whether you emerge as free individuals or disappear permanently into whatever solutions the various governments consider most expedient. The documents you carry could either secure your freedom or guarantee your elimination, depending on how skillfully you navigate conversations with people trained in international diplomacy and intelligence operations. The monk returns with information about the representatives' specific identities and apparent authority levels. The British delegate carries credentials from both commercial and military intelligence services. The American representative claims authority from pharmaceutical regulatory agencies and State Department operations. The German official bears documentation from industrial interests and diplomatic services. The Chinese delegate represents imperial administrative offices and traditional authority structures. Each representative's background suggests different priorities and negotiating approaches, creating opportunities to tailor your presentations to appeal to specific interests, while maintaining overall control of information that serves your broader objectives. But professional negotiators also possess skills and resources for detecting deception and applying pressure that could prove overwhelming if you misjudge their capabilities or intentions. We could meet with them separately, Chen Weimei suggests. Learn what each party offers before deciding which arrangement serves our interests best. The strategy has merit, but it also requires maintaining consistent stories while gathering information about competing proposals that might reveal more about your document's significance than you're prepared to share. Professional interrogators are trained to extract information through seemingly casual conversation, making every interaction potentially dangerous if you're not prepared for sophisticated questioning techniques. The afternoon sun begins its descent toward evening, marking another transition in a day that has already transformed you from captive courtesan to international fugitive to potential negotiating partner with some of the world's most powerful governments. Each phase has required different skills and knowledge, forcing you to discover capabilities you never knew you possessed, while navigating dangers you never imagined you might face. The documents against your ribs have become more than evidence of corruption or proof of criminal activity. They've become tools for reshaping your relationship with power structures that have always seen you as property to be bought and controlled, rather than as an individual capable of influencing outcomes that extend far beyond personal survival. But tools are only as effective as the skill with which they're used, and the negotiations ahead will test every lesson you've learned about reading people's motivations, understanding complex relationships, and identifying opportunities within systems that appear designed to exclude people like you from meaningful participation. The temple bells ring again, marking the hour when afternoon becomes evening, and when temporary sanctuary must give way to whatever resolution emerges from conversations with representatives of governments whose interests span continents, but whose immediate focus has narrowed to recovering documents that one former courtesan stole during a night when Shanghai's hidden networks were exposed to scrutiny. They were never designed to survive. Your story began with waking up in someone else's life, trapped by circumstances you didn't choose in a world where your survival depended entirely on pleasing others. Now you're about to sit down with some of the most powerful people in Asia to negotiate terms that will determine not just your future, but the future of international relationships that affect millions of lives throughout the region. The opium dreams that once provided escape from powerless reality have been replaced by waking possibilities that are both more dangerous and more liberating than anything chemical enhancement could have provided. You hold documents that could reshape the balance of power between East and West, information that makes you temporarily more important than emperors and industrialists, whose decisions normally determine the fate of entire populations. The teenage girl who entered the imperial court with nothing but intelligence and desperation has become a woman whose choices will influence the course of history. The question now is whether you can navigate the final negotiations skillfully enough to secure not just survival, but the kind of freedom that allows you to write your own story in a world that has never permitted women like you to hold the pen. The representatives wait below, each carrying offers that could provide security or destruction, depending on how accurately you assess their true intentions and capabilities. The documents in your possession pulse with possibilities that extend far beyond personal liberation to encompass questions about justice, power, and the price societies pay when prosperity depends on systematic deception and exploitation. Evening approaches over a Shanghai that will never be quite the same after tonight's revelations. While in a Buddhist temple dedicated to mercy and enlightenment, a former courtesan prepares to negotiate with empires whose collision has created both the opportunities and tragedies that define modern Asia. The collision continues, but for the first time, you're positioned to influence its direction, rather than simply survive its consequences, As the temple bells fade into Shanghai's evening air, you realize your journey from powerless courtesan to international negotiator represents more than just personal transformation. You've witnessed how easily entire societies can be built on hidden foundations of manipulation and control, where the very people making decisions about millions of lives might be unknowingly influenced by chemicals designed to serve interests they never agreed to support. The documents in your possession